I guess I kind of have a little affection for musicians, and particularly musicians from countries outside of the U.S. I don't know if you know, long before I went to law school, I made my living playing the drums professionally.
I do know that. I do know that.
I played all over the place, man. I played on cruise ships. A gig was a gig. Those were actually really fun days because I mostly saw people happy. Whereas as a lawyer, usually people start off with like, I have a problem, right? People applying for visas abroad need to know a couple of things.
So I do have tons of friends in the music industry that own record labels, and they are constantly moving a lot of artists, international artists around. And that's one of the biggest concerns right now, like with their business.
Right.
How do we get such and such here from Africa that's so hot to play in this arena here,
right,
in this state here? So these are the things that the DJ and music industry, the house music, the techno music, all these record labels that are surrounding these types of new artists are dealing with now, because the luxury of the business is being international. I don't believe that any artist that's coming out of any state, any city, any town, any corner of this world would want to stay there. They all want to share their arts with the world.
Right.
And that's what, when I think about how much that is being taken away, that's what really hurts. I feel it. So it's happening. But if you follow these steps, you're going to be okay. Don't bullshit on your application.
Yeah, that's definitely rule number one.
Rule number one.
Right. But a record label that wants to bring over an up-and-coming artist, they don't need to be at the extraordinary level to do that.
So for instance, an extraordinary visa that people may qualify, like somebody like Psy with the hit song Gangnam Style.
Right.
He got it.
Yeah.
So what do you...
One hit wonder,
but he got it.
He got it. So it is for people who are extraordinary in the STEM field, right? Science, technology, education, math, and the arts. So there are athletes that apply for it. As you know, I also play and teach judo. There's a number of high-level non-American judoka that qualify for that extraordinary visa because they've dedicated their life to it, and they have the proof that they're at the high end of the game. Psy, who I don't know how many millions of hits he got on that. Big time, right?
Everybody was singing it. Barris was at his concert last year.
Yeah, and even me, I probably still have it on my playlist.
It was incredible.
So, but that visa is basically a self-petition. You don't need someone to petition for you for a green card, right? But what about the up-and-coming African artist that some record label wants to bring over? The guy's hot where he is, but he's up-and-coming, doesn't have all those accolades, so he's not going to qualify for an extraordinary visa. But as we spoke about before, that record company or a promoter can petition for the person or the band to come over and do performances, and so that's different. That's a non-immigrant visa for a temporary period.
What's the temporary time like?
So it really depends. Supposing I have a, I don't know, a 14-month tour through North America,
Got
Canada,
it.
and the U.S.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've put together gigs at the Beacon in New York, and at this place in Chicago, and at this place in Florida, and at a couple of restaurants or nightclubs that are a little bit bigger. I can do that, and the way you do that essentially is the promoter has to put together the itinerary, which can change after you're here, but they have to put together this proposed itinerary, show the promotional materials for it, show that the promoter is financially secure enough to have this pay for all this stuff for the band, and
They have to show income
right.
from their
The promoters, you have to show that they're legit, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the more experience a promoter has, the easier this becomes to do because the consulates get used. They are the record label of the promoter, or the petitioner, in the same way that an employer could petition for employees. Like you hear about the H-1Bs for, you know, techies.
We have them all throughout the television industry because we have affiliates in different countries.
So those H-1Bs are non-immigrant visas that last about 6 years.
Yeah.
And what people typically do when they're on that, if they like living here, they work on their green card while they're on that temporary H-1B.
Wow.
The other thing that happens with bands, it used to happen a lot, and if it happens, you're going to be barred forever. Is, you know, sometimes bands, especially ethnic bands, you know, they got 15 pieces in the band, they got 12 pieces. By pieces, I mean musicians, and then there's a sound engineer, and, you know, there might be the maestro, whatever. They sometimes try to slip in some people on that list in the band that have nothing to do with that band because they want a way to get to the U.S., right? And if you get caught for that, it's going to require a waiver that would be very difficult to come back in the future.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you have to be careful,
Yeah.
especially under this administration. They're not playing.
They're not playing. That's right. And so the other thing, when I was mentioning about the visa applications, you know, being straight and all that, we're also in a digital world. And the databases are just mind-blowing, especially now with AI. So, you know, if you're involved in any kind of fraud with any kind of immigration application, you know, every answer on every application is in databases now. And so they can see patterns very, very quickly. And it's going to become easier and easier for the government to figure out those misrepresentations. And so I just would not recommend in any way ever that people do that. If you get denied, you get denied. It does not pay to try to cross that line, because if you get denied for fraud, it's going to be almost impossible to overcome that in the future.
Because you're not going to be able to talk to anybody about why this even happened. It's just going to be as is.
Right.
There's not going to be any room for a dialogue.
Right.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, all visas are discretionary, including immigrant visas. So nobody has a right to come here, and they can be denied without giving you a reason as well.
Right.
But why give them any reason? So just figure out how to do it the right way. But for musicians, artists, photographers, high-end photographers,
fashion people, dancers,
athletes,
doctors.
Doctors is a whole different world.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, doctors, there's a lot of special rules with doctors that I don't really want to get into. It's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, but I just figured,
But we don't make it easy for doctors who are not educated in the U.S. to come here and practice.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so many of them come some other way through marriage or something like that. They also have to take the exam in English, and so that's why you see a lot of Southeast Asians, because all of those countries where they speak, Urdu or Bangla, they also speak a lot of English. So it's a little bit easier for them. That's why you see a lot of Filipino nurses, right? They speak a lot of, not everybody's speaking Tagalog. They're speaking English.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier for them to come and live here legally in the medical field. Yeah, but going back to, your artists, your musicians, your content creators, your dancers, your athletes, your one-hit wonders, they all have the possibility of coming either temporarily or permanently. And the key is to document the applications with proper evidence to support it, and just not to bullshit in any way.
You can't. Absolutely not. This administration's standing on business. And for the artists that don't qualify for the extraordinary visa, what other visas would you recommend for them to go into for a clearer path?
Right, so there's temporary visas, non-immigrant visas. O is one of them. O is a little difficult. P is another one that's a little easier, but it also depends upon who is doing the petition. Mm-hmm. So, I have to honestly answer that this department is in the hands of my partner. I get the waiver cases, the immigration consequences of criminal or fraudulent conduct, and she does do a lot of that. But there are various non-immigrant visas that they could qualify for. But those non-immigrant visas require a petitioner. So I have a magazine, you're a good photographer, I have a project that's gonna last 18 months. I might bring you over on an O, but a little less time I might bring you over on a P. It's gonna depend upon what your qualifications are and really my needs as the petitioner, if that makes sense.
Yes, and then there's also, the artist world, the corporate world, but what about the relationship world? And now we're two immigrants are here together and they're both applying for their visas.
Right. So as a general rule, if you are legally married and you get some immigration benefit, your spouse and your children will be derivatives. With H-1Bs, a spouse can come and very often qualify for a work authorization, although not always. I believe, again, this is my partner's area. But if we're in a situation where you're on an H-1B, I'm on an E-2, we love each other, we're living together, we're not legally married, now one of us does have a path to permanent residency, we need to get married because the spouse will be a derivative. And people who consult my partner, Eileen, often have that situation. They are both here on some non-immigrant status and they both have different qualifications. She just did a consult that came to me through my judo world. She and the husband are Russian. They're Ukrainian, and they're here on this parole which allowed Ukrainians to come and stay here for a temporary period. And this period's going to expire next year, and this administration already said they're not extending it. He's a PhD candidate, and she is a former Olympian in judo and a high-level person. So they are contemplating which one of them would be best to go for the extraordinary person visa. But if either one of them gets it, the other one will get the benefit as well by being the spouse, a derivative.
These are great stories, and for every tragic situation that we're going to see, I do have faith that we're going to hear some extraordinary, amazing stories through these times, and I definitely am looking forward in hearing those stories. I wish everyone the best. I really do. These are the strangest times.
Yeah.
These are the strangest times.
But still, Jahida, people are applying for visas to come to the U.S., whether to come as an immigrant or a non-immigrant, to artists. We still bring over a lot of bands. They want to come here and play their gigs and stuff. We still have a system in play for that. Although I will say that the visa processing has become much slower now. I guess I kind of have a little affection for musicians, and particularly musicians from countries outside of the U.S. I don't know if you know, long before I went to law school, I made my living playing the drums professionally.
I do know that. I do know that.
I've played all over the place, man. I played on cruise ships. A gig was a gig, and those were actually really fun days because I mostly saw people happy. Whereas as a lawyer, usually people start off with I have a problem, right? People applying for visas abroad need to know a couple of things. Anything that's inaccurate on the application is going to be an automatic denial. And so a lot of people who come here or want to come here, who, let's say, live in a barrio or a poor neighborhood, they want to use their aunt's address because it's in a nice neighborhood. And immigration is going to know that I'm not coming to permanently live in the U.S. I just want my tourist visa. But immigration is going to know that that's not your real address. You take, like a lot of Latino countries have cedulas, national IDs. And there's a lot of information from that ID number that the consulates have access to, like where you pay your light bill is not the address that you put down that you live on. So filling out these applications correctly and honestly is the first thing on any visa application, whether it's immigrant or non-immigrant, because if you misrepresent something, that's an automatic denial. You try to misrepresent your education level or whatever it is, depending upon the type of visa that you're doing, you're going to have a headache. And so the process has become a bit slow, but we still are bringing over a ton of mostly ethnic musicians from the DR, from Southeast Asia, India, Pakistan. They all have their own world of music. And some of it is pretty awesome, actually. So, they have to go through that visa process, and promoters have to, when they're bringing over a band, have to put together an itinerary of the gigs and the time frame and show the promotion materials. And then the band has got to, or the artist has to list their accolades, how much play do they get, newspaper articles, awards that they received, and that type of thing to be able to convince a consular office that this is a legit band or artist or high-end photographer, or even now, I guess the new trend is content creators, right? What would make a content creator eligible for, let's say, an extraordinary person's visa? I'm not sure of the exact answer to that. Like, do you need 1 million followers, 5 million followers? As I would say now, also the content has to be something that's acceptable to this administration, right? So we are in a new world, but people who still want to come here and apply, and some people still do want to come here and apply. The key is to not bullshit on those applications, to be very accurate in detail. And I'm not trying to get business from this, but I would not recommend that anybody do it themselves for the same reason. Like, I would never do my own taxes, right? Get an expert.